Welcome back to the Your Health program. This program airs every Monday at 4 o'clock, and you can see a replay of the program on ampmedia.org and this very channel at 11 p.m. So we do have several ways for you to tune in, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Gina Renee. I'm a licensed acupuncturist here on the peninsula, as well as a holistic nutritionist, and I've written a book, and I know how tedious that process can be. And my next guest, David Rasch, he wrote this wonderful piece called The Blocked Writer's Book of the Dead, and he is going to help writers everywhere get over this block that we more often than not experience. So thank you so much, David, for being with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, and why the heck did you decide to write this book?
Yes. All right. Well, I'm a psychologist, so I first got interested in issues about writing when I was director of a counseling service at Stanford University. And through that, I started meeting academics, junior faculty, graduate students, postdocs who had to write for their careers and had to be very productive writers, but were experiencing difficulties and would get kind of locked up or stuck, and then would be uncomfortable talking about it because they'd be embarrassed, and professionally, you know, kept these problems to themselves, but started to get anxious, depressed, and having their careers, held up. So I started to do some work there, and I couldn't find anyone to refer these people to. I looked to find someone who was maybe an expert in this area, but really didn't find anyone. So I decided to just look into it myself, and started to read about authors, read biographies, autobiographies, read what little literature there was out there, read all the self-help books, and learned a lot just from talking to people. I started to offer groups and workshops at Stanford, and found there were all kinds of people who wanted to write who weren't connected with academia at all. People who just were staff people at the university but had the secret dream of being a writer, or had tried to be a writer, or people who had never finished their degree because they'd had writing blocks. There was a large population. Every time I do a workshop, the room would fill up. And
awesome.
So I realized that there's an issue here. And I started to offer classes through the university, continuing education studies that I still do, and also in the community. Workshops, and started giving talks at conferences and what have you on the topic.
And then just decided to put it all together in a book of your own.
Eventually got over my own writing blocks and decided to write a book. And the book is rather compact, but it's really an accumulation of all those years of what I found to be useful and helpful to people in actually trying to help them change. And what's wonderful about your book is that you give a lot of practical suggestions, and it's almost like a workbook. It's like a workbook. Which is really great, because you get the juices flowing. You don't just talk about it and then you put the book aside and go, okay. Right, which is the most common thing, is that people want help, they read the self-help book and either feel guilty because they're not doing what they should be doing, or they think there's good ideas in it, but trying to sustain those ideas in your life and your writing over time is the hardest thing. It's so easy to fall off the wagon and postpone it.
And what have you found has been kind of the most common block for all groups that you've been working with, whether it's professionals or non-professionals?
Well, let me say two things. One is I found that it's really variable why people get stuck. It's not one particular thing, which is sort of eye-opening for me. And however, there are common themes, one of which is sort of like performance anxiety, and that is writing's a very private thing, but as soon as you've written something and you show it to someone, it's very public. You're exposed, you're vulnerable, your ego might be attached and to what you've written. You don't know how people will respond. So often people will get too self-conscious too early in the process and sort of over-edit themselves or over-criticize themselves while they're trying to get that first draft down. And this slows everything down. It makes the writing process arduous, uncomfortable, and it means the next time you sit down to write, you have some resistance there because it wasn't a pleasant experience. You know,
absolutely.
It's work.
Yes, it's very, very true. And I don't think that people don't really realize, I mean, how paralyzing writer's block can be. And all of the dynamics associated with it, like you mentioned, you know, sometimes the more you get into it, the more insecure that you get, the more self-conscious that you feel about putting, you know, something from your own heart and soul out for other people to judge or read
That's
or learn from or whatever it is.
You have to, as a writer, make some peace with being criticized.
Yeah.
Because you need that to get better.
Yeah.
You need to be able to tolerate a certain amount of that. And you also need to know how not to expose yourself unnecessarily to criticism that's going to harm you or slow you down or stop you. And that may mean knowing who do you show your work to, who do you go to for sharing your work or getting feedback, because some people are good at that. You know, they can actually read and tell you what you need to hear, even if you don't like hearing it, in a way that doesn't stop you or make you feel demoralized or over-criticized. And other people, stuff comes out of their mouth too quickly, and you know, it can really slow you down and stop you. I don't know how many people I've talked to who said, yeah, in 4th grade, this teacher said this to me about my writing. And
so
it's
true.
Still lodged in there, and it affects them to this day, you know.
It's so true.
Yeah.
All that conditioning that we've had since childhood, everything
There's a lot
comes
about writing.
out. A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. It's almost like public speaking in a sense. You know, it's that same type of fear, putting yourself out there. So I imagine that there are different blocks depending on the subject matter of the work and the purpose for the work. Like you said, if it's for a degree versus something that's just meant to entertain others.
Yeah.
If somebody came to you and said, you know what, I've always wanted to write this book, but I just can't get started. I just don't know exactly where to start. I have so much information, but I don't know where to start. What would you suggest to that person?
Often a person in that situation is, has so many thoughts about the project that they have trouble picking the one to start with, you know, because it just seems so huge. And often the answer is to just start writing and get people more comfortable with sort of messy first drafts and just getting words down, and to develop a routine of writing that happens every day or 5 days a week. But just where you have a routine, so it's like brushing your teeth. And if this is an important part of your life, and for many writers it's like a core thing, you know, it's like the thing that makes them really feel the most gratified is when they're writing. And if they're not writing, there's real suffering attached to it. So it's a way of getting people to just start writing and let it be messy, let it be unorganized, but getting the words down. And then you'll find that often the act of writing helps clarify thought, helps you start to develop structure, you know, that you can then, the answers start to come in the process, not before you've started the process. So
to just put your pen to paper and just go. Yeah, I found that when I wrote my book too. That was the hardest thing for me until I was told that, you know, why don't you hire an editor to help you? And I thought, okay, well then I'm just going to write and she'll clean it all up and make it sound great. And she didn't change anything. And I thought,
you're good.
Well, she said I wasn't a good writer, but I was a good communicator. So I took it as a compliment, but that did really help me. So it's the same type of thing. Once the limitations are lifted and you know that it's going to be messy, it might not be perfect. It's not going to be perfect the first time, but to just get your pen to paper and just get that pen flowing and
sometimes
moving.
Meeting other people, all writers are different, but it can be a very isolating kind of a thing. So if you have a way to connect with people who share an interest in writing, there's writing clubs, and I belong to one in the Monterey Bay Area, Central Coast Writers. But you also meet people who might help you edit or publish or can just give you support and feedback so you aren't too alone in the whole thing.
So do you think that it's very important then for somebody who's very serious about writing to allow their work to be seen and read by others, like through writing groups? I know I've attended a couple of writing groups, and I remember one time one of the exercises was just, you know, you got 15 minutes and you just wrote a story. Anything that came to your head, and I was just, because you know you were
probably happened though.
Something happened, but then it had to be read in front of everyone, and that was terrifying.
Yeah, some people are very good writers, but they have very hard time either finishing or when they're done actually showing it to someone. I mean, just that step where you have the public exposure, there's a lot of fear for some people, and it can stop them from realizing their dream.
So do you think that writing groups are good therapy in a sense?
They can
then?
be, if it's the right group and it kind of fits, you know, who you are and the people in the group, so that you have a sense of camaraderie and people who can maybe tell you, don't give up on this, or, you know, if you just change this a little bit, it would flow better. And little things like that that might make you feel encouraged and more confident, you know, to continue.
Yeah. So are you still offering workshops as well as putting this book out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recently did a workshop here in Carmel, and I don't have another one planned as of yet, but I'll probably do something in the summer. And in the fall, I teach through Stanford's continuing education program. So that's like a 5-week, 10-hour class.
Wow.
On this topic.
Wow. Lots of people
Yeah.
need you.
It's interesting how many people are out there who want to write more than they are. And,
Yeah.
And when you think about it, writing's a very difficult thing for the brain to do. It requires a coordination of numerous parts of the brain, and it has to all kind of be working well, because we've essentially trained our brain to do something that it's not evolutionarily designed to do. So we've had to, you know, it takes years to learn how to write, and that's why. So when people feel bad about not having it just flow, or when they think to be a real writer it should just flow all the time, it's not like that. You know, it's hard work. Some of the greatest writers wrote in fits and starts with tremendous blocks and difficulties along the way, and sometimes that's part of the process as opposed to a problem. You know, and because it's hard work, it's good to have support, encouragement, and a routine for doing it, so that you kind of, like exercise, you know, it takes effort. So if you have a routine you get used to, you sort of build up the muscles a bit, and you kind of condition yourself that that's just part of your life to write. You know.
That's very important, and you've mentioned that a couple of times, so I see that that's something that if you're really serious about writing, that you really need to get serious, just like you said, just like working out or brushing your teeth. You make it a part of your routine where you set that time aside, and it's sacred time. Whether you write one sentence or a paragraph or nothing, you just put that out there that this is my time.
Right, right. It's honoring that part of yourself, really, to create the time for it. And many people who aren't writing that I've seen do have, especially emotional health consequences for not writing. I think any creative person who isn't doing what they really feel moved to do, there's a sort of a price you pay for that, and it can come out with sort of anxiety or depression or low energy.
Yeah, in acupuncture I see a lot of people sometimes just feeling stuck in their lives, just feeling stuck. And I imagine that this, I mean, having
Similar
a writer's
thing.
block was kind of a stuckness.
It's being stuck,
but also it's encouraging to know that it is part of the process. So anybody who's going through can feel like it's okay. This is part of the process. It's not just me. I'm not a failure or a procrastinator, but that this is really something so big and so important that I just have to take time with it.
Yeah, to be compassionate to yourself about it, and at the same time putting a little bit of effort as well to keep moving forward.
Otherwise,
it's kind of a balance. Because there's parts of our inner lives that don't want us to do it. It's like with exercise. We feel that sort of pull back, you know, and with the writing, there's often a dance there where you feel the resistance and you feel the desire to do it, and you have to kind of find a way where the desire is, you know, getting the upper hand.
Yes, otherwise you die with your book inside you, right?
That's right.
We don't want to do that.
No.
So it's wonderful that you've written this book. Now, are you going to write more books after this process?
I may.
Yeah?
Yeah, I write songs. That's part of what the writing I like to do is, and I'm starting to write some fiction, and we'll see where that goes.
It's wonderful. How long did it take you to write this book?
Well, it's hard to say because I had bits and pieces of it I was putting together over a 20-year period.
Oh, so did you know when you first started gathering all this information that you were going to actually write a book?
No, in fact, I didn't get into this because I was a writer. I got into it as a therapist to help people. So, and there was lots of books out there, so I figured I'm just going to try to put together these programs that I have. And then at a certain point, realized that my take on it was maybe its own unique take, and I may as well put it together and put it out as a book.
That's wonderful. And so you've taken all of the information that you've gathered and the different exercises maybe that you've done in some of your classes and workshops and put them all in here. Right. So this is meant to be used, not just read.
You write in it, yeah.
You can write in it. I don't know if you can see, but there's a lot of it's like a workbook where you use it, you're proactive with it. So it's wonderful. And you're writing songs. So the perfumes and tunes, will you be a part of that event?
Yes.
That's wonderful.
Yes, that's my band playing in the event, and I've written the songs, and we even have one perfume song in there, so
fun.
Should be good.
Fun. Well, thank you so much. Tell us now, the Blocked Writer's Book of the Dead, and why did you name it this, real quickly?
I was trying to think of a title, and for some reason I thought of that one, and it just felt like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I started looking. The books of the dead are some of the most ancient writings that exist on the planet, and they are self-help books. But they're self-help books about making the transition from this life to the afterlife. That's what a book of the dead is, and it's sort of a self-help. It tells you, here are the steps, here's the things you do, here's the things to not do, to make this transition to this, you know, glorious afterlife that you're hoping to go to. And so, that kind of fits.
Why not? Totally.
Yeah.
It totally
I have quotes in this book from both of those books of the dead.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I really encourage anyone to get this book. If you are wanting to write, or if you have a family member or loved one that's struggling with a little bit of block but has greatness inside that needs to get out, tell us how we can get your book.
The best way to get it is off of my blog. It's David Rasch, PhD, all one word, .wordpress.com.
Okay.
And there's a way to purchase the book right through the blog.
And is it available at Eshel Ecolux?
I'll put it in there.
Very good. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you so much for being with us. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
All right.